Ramy, I'm
Okay.
so happy that you're here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. We've had Tamara Mellon here and Trina Turk, and we've had a bunch of designers, but you are somebody who I personally wear your clothing on the daily.
Thank you.
It makes me feel like such a boss. It's the combo of like feeling so sexy and also so just like a queen in owning my space. And you've just done such an incredible job with everything, every detail. So I want to know where this all started and how it even came to be. So take us back.
Thank you. Um, so I started my company in the beginning of 2010. And at that time, my youngest was 5 and then 7 and 10. So they were already like out of the house by 7:30, bussed off to school. So I had really a full day of not much to do. Um, and so I was spending a lot of time shopping, going to lunch with friends, just
As
kind
it
of,
should be. Yep.
yeah. I don't know, that gets a little old quickly, but
True.
um, in that time, I was always looking for just a sexy top. I had a lot of jeans, dressed very casual. And all I wanted to do was grab something out of my closet, which I always looked in my closet that I have nothing to wear. And then I came back and I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I can't find anything, which obviously is like kind of silly because it's a closet full of clothes. But what I really wanted to wear didn't exist, or at least where I was shopping. So that's how I came up with the idea. And I said to my husband, I'm just going to learn how to make it. And that's what I did. And living in New York, there's a whole garment center. So, and a lot of people I knew in the garment center or knew someone in the garment center. I knew nothing about it. Out of college, I was in advertising. So this was just something I didn't have any experience with. And one thing led to another. And eventually I came up with 6 sexy tops and 1 very mini dress. And that was like the start to my business, working out of my apartment for 3 years.
Wow. First of
That's a
all,
quick synopsis
no, it's great.
of how I started.
we're gonna dive into it and piece it apart and go further with it. But I feel like that's the idea for like a book or a TV show. I have nothing to wear because it is so true that no matter what your age and how many times you've been to the mall, like you look at your closet, you're like, I have nothing to wear. And it's just that I think so often when women go to buy things, maybe we're buying things because of price or we're buying things because it's trendy or somebody had it, but we're not
Right.
necessarily buying pieces that fully support the vision we have for ourselves, how we want to walk in the world, what makes us feel totally alive. But then for you to go ahead and say, like, oh, I'm just going to do it, even though you had zero experience. I mean, I say all the time, and I'm sure this is something someone said on my show that I now repeat, which is everybody has an idea, but execution wins every time because people don't do their ideas. And so
Totally.
for you to do it, what on earth? I mean, and you had little kids. I have 3 daughters, 5, 8, and 10. And like, you're, oh yeah, I'm just going to create something out of nothing. So what is the mindset that women who are listening might be able to take a baby bit from in
Yeah.
order
I
to
mean,
like,
I will say
go ahead.
it was very organic what I did, which probably made it easier because I wasn't in a rush and I was willing to learn from anybody who would help me. And it was really all women who were helping me. Um, Stephanie Greenfield, who started and owned Scoop, she was really helpful. Jennifer Miller, she's a jeweler and has a jewelry store. She was really helpful. And little by little, I would just sit with them and learn and understand like how I could build a business, but also pursue my vision. And that's what made it made it interesting, exciting, and also fun to interact with all these fabulous women. So I didn't beat myself up in the beginning when you make mistakes, which is every day, all the time. So I think my advice to a lot of these women would be continue to pursue your vision and your dream and really just ask everyone for help.
Yeah. And this word I just wrote down because you said it a few times is the word vision. And I think that's the most important word that you use because so often, because we have so many limiting beliefs that play over and over again, we lose the vision so fast. And
Yeah.
when you are so clear of the vision and you just take all of your energy and all of your faculties and all of your resources and you just keep looking at that horizon, you just keep looking at the island, you're going to land there. But if you don't have that vision and you don't really allow it to fully sort of become part of every fiber of your being, good luck, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably the through line with everyone who's been on this show. It's like when Bobby Brown was here, it's like I started with a lipstick, but I just had this vision. And then
Yeah.
as she talked about the vision, even though it hadn't yet, Walt Disney World hadn't yet been built, other people can see the picture she can paint.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about.
And I knew I wanted to do something. There was like a lot of hours in my day that I wanted to fill somehow, some way. But I also love jewelry. But a lot of people had jewelry businesses. So I was like, I don't want to do jewelry, but I really need sexy tops to wear with my jewelry. So I had a plan of how to wear this necklace and how to wear something low and just how to style it. So that also helped is I was very focused
Yeah.
on what I didn't have and what I wanted.
Okay. So now let's talk about some of the big like inflection points, the big milestone moments. So you started, you said, with like a few tops and like one mini dress.
Yep.
What's the next big milestone? Like, did you get discovered by somebody? Was there a big buyer at one point? Like, what was the next big milestone after that?
So after I had that small collection, I did trunk shows. And my first trunk show was at my sister's house, who lives in New Jersey. Because she's funny, like her friends would never not show up. So I'm like, I'm gonna go there first.
Yeah. See, but this is
Um,
perfect. It's like you have
yeah.
this big vision, but then you take the tiniest next step. That's it.
So
Yeah.
that's, so in that process of doing trunk shows, everybody knew someone who owned a boutique. So I had no idea what the wholesale business was.
Right.
I just was like, I'm going to sell these great tops. You're going to pick out the silhouette. You're going to tell me what color you want. You're going to pay me, and I'm going to go make it for you, which really wasn't a model that I could continue because my factory was in Brooklyn. It was one woman who had a sample room. But that's what I did to understand,
Start. Yeah.
to start and to learn. And, I'm at a pattern maker, just all these little steps. I had to do it that way in order to get where I am today. Um, so in that time, there was a girl who was a personal shopper at Bergdorf's, and she had a ton of clients. A lot of them were friends of mine. And I think, my friends were wearing these tops. It was a beautiful silk black button down, something really simple, but wasn't sold at Bergdorf's or anywhere. And so she actually started sending clients to me because she felt like that was also missing. So through that connection, we eventually hooked up with the buyers at Bergdorf Goodman. And that was one of my big, like, wow moments, is when they were the first department store to carry my line.
I
So, and when you
love
say you're
that.
Bergdorf Goodman, that's like a really big deal to everybody else. So it was a small collection on a tea stand. They loved that no one else carried Ramy Brook at the time. And it really was great for their customer. It was in our backyard because I live in New York.
Yeah.
And that was a big aha moment for me.
It's so big on so many levels. It's funny because I picked up this Bobbi Brown lipstick and they were also her first buyer with 8 lipsticks. That's how she started. But what's so big about it is not only is it like definitely the creme de la creme of like luxury, but so many people who I talk to, I speak to millions of women every year. And we have this assumption that when we're starting, depending on our own perception of our expertise or lack thereof, that there are certain places where just, oh, well, that could never happen. In order to be there, I would have to have already been here and there and there. And it's like, you get to take, you get to, show up. There's all the fishing holes in the world are available, right? Like, who's to say you could be sketching somebody's face in Central Park and making $18 for your visual artwork, or you could be at the Met, right? Like,
right.
You decide to be a match for either one, right? And just reminding that to yourself when you tell that story, I think is really huge. Because again, we just have this fake playbook in our head of like, that could never happen. Why would I even? But it does happen.
And that's, other advice. People are going to shoot you down all the time. They're going to be like, oh, so-and-so tried that. It just didn't work. Or this one, she had a business for a while and it was a really bad experience. So I just kind of blocked out everybody. Maybe it was probably naive, which worked in my favor. Because I was like, well, I don't care what you say. I'm just going to do it. Like the girls in New Jersey wore it. My friends like it. And then like, it was, the organic growth really helped with my confidence in building the business. Because once you start to really go into the wholesale world and start to work with the department stores, there's a lot of uphill battles that you have to, get through in order to be successful.
It's interesting, we'll talk about those battles in a second and your resilience, but it's interesting how many people have come on this show and said, and everyone told me, oh, that will never work. It's just so funny. It's almost like a joke. It's like satire. Like, really? You also
I'm like, someone has to succeed. I'm like, one person has to.
It's unbelievable how many people's dreams never would have gotten anywhere if they listened to that. It's so funny how that's always, well, that'll never work. So then you talked about how there's this need for sort of resilience because you're going to go through some process, right? And that's every business iterates, right? Like every single business is going to have moments where the market doesn't want it in that color, or they want it at that size or at that time of year. That's part of it. But what are you alluding to that you think is really then needed within a person to sort of sustain themselves through some of those rough waters?
Well, for me, I was very lucky to have a husband who was very helpful and supportive, especially when the kids were younger, because it's hard to do work with like all young kids around and concentrating on building something to succeed. So that was truly helpful. And then the support of all my friends too. Like everybody was willing to either host a show or also just help me sell. Like my college roommate, I picked her up on the way to half these shows. I'm like, she's a lawyer, but she doesn't work. So I'm like, you have to help me.
Right.
So I'm like, and every friend, the support was unbelievable. They all were so happy to like get on board to help me build this business. Because in the beginning, as I said, I didn't really have a plan. I was working out of my apartment, and then I took another apartment in my building because I had so many orders that I didn't know where to put everything. So the support of, people around you, whomever that may be, whether it's your parents or siblings, for me, that was extremely helpful and encouraging too. And I really wanted to succeed and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being organized and working and creating something and seeing people wear my clothes when I was at a restaurant.
Yeah, that's really cool. And speaking of seeing people wear your clothes, in my notes, my producer, Emma, she was like, Selena Gomez, Kate Beckinsale, Cindy Crawford, Alyssa Milano, like all these people, Mila Kunis, Jessica Alba, all these people have been wearing your clothes. How did that start? Like, how did that kind of go viral? When did that all transcend into sort of like Hollywood?
Right. So when I was originally at Bergdorf's and I was hooked up with like the head personal shopper, not the girl who sent people to me, but her boss, I went to go see her, and I lined up my clothes in this beautiful dressing room. And the stylist for Chelsea Handler came in because she was doing a show in New York. And she came in and she saw everything. She goes, I'll take all of these. And the buyer, I mean, the shopper was like,
What?
That's great, but like, we don't even sell her stuff here. So I happened to be there, and I connected with that stylist for Chelsea. And I gave her all those tops, and she ended up wearing it for opening night of her performance at the Beekman. So that was like the first like kind of celebrity to wear the clothes. And then I ended up hooking up with, it really happens in LA. That's where all the celebrity stylists are. So just through talking to people, I met someone else who was a celebrity stylist, and she meets with all these people and started like really giving my clothes out to different celebrities. And some of them really have their favorites. Like they either love the pants. Cindy Crawford, she and I have a mutual friend, and it's a clothing line that's great for so many ages. And especially as you get older, you still want to feel sexy and put on sexy clothes, but you're not wearing what you wore from 20 years ago. So Cindy loved it. She's taller. She liked the fabric. She doesn't wear super tight clothing. So ever since our friend like introduced us, she became like a full supporter of the brand. So I kind of got lucky there.
It's interesting because you can say get lucky, but there's no doubt that when somebody is vibrating like fully in the magic of possibility, the synchronicity is just nonstop. And that's the thing, is that it's like tuning the radio to a certain station that you're really able to hear clearly. And then anything else that's in that same frequency, that same station, you just find each other. You're like vibrating in the same way, So I think that that's something that people listening to this right now can be taking from it.
And she's lovely too. I mean, I text her. I mean, it sounds funny. It's like, I'm texting Cindy. I'm like, maybe she'll, she needs something. So, and she's lovely, and she really likes the clothing. She wore this jacket that we made. I would say it's now like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And it was a canvas army green jacket. And the back said happy, sexy, strong. Those are like the 3 words we love for women. I want to be happy, sexy, and strong. And she wore it when the jacket wasn't even in season anymore. And everybody wanted that jacket. But it was like, we didn't have any more, but we want to bring something back like that. Because someone like that, when she wears it, it really is influential.
And I love those words. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I've been talking about it recently a lot, that I see so many women who have sort of turned off their sexiness. And it's interesting, and it's actually heavy. It's very heavy. Like, since a lot of little girls have been little, and I'm not even talking about big T trauma stuff. I'm just talking about little paper cuts along the way where women start to feel like, oh, if I, say this, maybe someone will look at me like this. Or if I kind of own it, maybe the other girls will actually say something. Like, there's a lot of little things and big things that I think over time, women kind of shut down their sexiness. They kind of shut down their fully embodied feminine self. And when I say fully embodied, I mean all of our chakras, like all of our energy centers, like you're wise, you're strong, you're happy, you're sexy, but all of it, to turn off the part of us that's a sexual being. It's not even about sex itself. It's about so much more than that. There is a dynamic at play when we are fully in our feminine, just like when someone's fully in their masculine. Like, it's so important to be fully and wholly alive. And I think so many women are out of touch with it. And I want to know why you find that word so important, and why you think every woman can find a place inside of them where they can feel sexy. Because I think that
Yeah.
they don't think they
I mean, I
can.
guess for me, that translates to feeling good about yourself. So that word, I guess, has many, many connotations, and they could be good and they could be bad, according to the world, but they should never be bad. Um, so I think it's a word that's like scary for a lot of people. And women, are judged in so many ways. So, if you're a mom with little kids, it's still okay to feel sexy and dress sexy and, look good. You don't have to be that old vision of a 1950s housewife. Um, but for me, that word like embodies so much about women and how they feel. So, um, the word sexy to me means wearing something low cut or something mini, or, just something that when you walk out the door, you're like, wow, I feel great. So that word has so many different meanings. We always say sexy, happy, strong. And this brand is meant to empower women the minute they put this clothes on their body. They are who you are. And then this only helps you become even stronger, happier, sexier, better, because you're feeling good about yourself. So it really is all about internally how you feel.
Yeah, 100%. I also love that your clothing is not just sexy, but it's also really feminine. And in the colors you use, and in some of just like there's like an edgy sexiness with this softness, and I can't really explain it, but when I see it, I see it in my,
Right.
like, right there in front of me. Um, we talk a lot on this show about the business of branding and aesthetics, and how you call people forward to the brand with like a certain world you create with this brand. What were some of those intentional things you were really clear about, which is in the brand, all of the way in which you've done the branding?
So I think because I had a certain aesthetic of the silks and the blousy look, it was important to me to emphasize, which isn't always easy to do in branding, is that this is a brand that's good for women of so many ages. I always say it's like good for 18 to 80. So, the fact that I could wear something, my daughter could wear something, and my mother could wear something just shows that no matter what age you are, there is something that we have for you that makes you feel great. So part of the branding message, I hope, um, gets out there to women. You don't have to be 25 and, stick thin to wear this brand. And you also don't have to be, um, like a mother of 3 kids, and this is the only brand that you could wear because
Right.
you had all these kids and now you just need something. So it really is, the message is this is a brand for women. It's to make you feel good about yourself, it's to empower you and get you through the day so you're confident. Which, when you're confident and you feel you look great, it's easy to get out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There's
yeah.
there's an idea in the business space, we hear a lot about how you have to own your niche, and you should make something, instead of having a restaurant that has everything on the menu, like just make grilled cheese. So I'm wondering what you think about those rules, because you're saying we make everything that feels really sexy and empowering for women 18 to 80. And it hasn't held you back that you're not specific in like this particular age group. So what do you think about that
Right.
idea of being only for a certain niche?
Yeah. So I think it's good to expand into a lifestyle brand. Um, but we concentrate or initially concentrate on just ready to wear. So I wanted to get that right. And it was really just sexy tops. And then it turned into dresses. And then I did a few bottoms. And then, I was only looked at as a items brand instead of a collection. And then I realized, you know what? People aren't going to look at me as a collection. It's going to be hard to like get a section of my own or get my name on the wall at these department stores. So I'm going to now start to do everything in that ready to wear world and really hone in on all the clothing because we already have that woman, but now we're going to give her denim and now we're going to give her a jacket and now we're going to give her a sweater. But we did hone in on that category, and it's a wide range of body types and ages. But what I haven't done quite yet, because the advice was like, kind of like do this right and like, get to a point where you are known for this. It's taken me a minute to learn how to do other categories. I did bags for a minute, but I didn't really understand that business and how to do it right. And I tried and they were great and they were very stylish and fun. But because I didn't understand it, I decided to put that on the back burner. So when people do say hone in on your craft, there is something to say about that. And so I still am focusing on, building the greatest contemporary brand in the world. And that eventually will have other legs and arms to it. We made sunglasses, I made perfume, different things we're delving into because I feel like I want something head to toe. So that is good advice when people say focus on something and learn to do that well. But at some point, it's okay to break out because you're learning different things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand. I never really knew that's like so inside baseball. I had never heard like ready to wear versus lifestyle. Like I don't know the fashion world at all.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like pieces versus like a whole, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing though, that does put you in a certain world and not in other worlds is the price and the quality of the materials, right? Because having a niche is not just based on age group. It's all not just based on, a lot of like box that you can check. It's also based on other things. And one of the things is the quality and the price that already puts you in a niche, like there's nothing that I can, if I'm going to buy something that's Ramy Brook, I'm not spending $50. I'm not spending $100. Like there just isn't anything. And I want to delve into this because if there's one piece of resistance that is like the creme de la creme for every woman that I talk to who wants to start a business, it's this feeling around shame for charging at a certain premium because there's this, it's almost like codependent. It's like this assumed responsibility that kindness means your price
right. That's interesting.
in your business should be accessible to everyone when, like Tory Burch creates, and so do you, I'm just using her as an example, like foundations. Like if you want to be kind and giving, you can do that and you can create a brand that is priced exactly where it needs to be in the market. I just want to hear what you have to say about women who think they need to charge less because they would no longer be a good person, a kind person, if they were to price something that not every person can buy today.
Right. So, I was very inspired by the high-end designers, the Lanvins, Gucci, Prada. That's what I was seeing out there. And that's what I'd loved to buy. But I also thought that those prices were getting very high for something that was just a black silk blouse. And that's really like the impotence of why I started. I'm like, I don't want to spend $1,000 on something that looks like it shouldn't be $1,000.
Right.
So my influence is definitely that designer market and in a contemporary price point. So there's different levels of what people think the cost should be. And then, there's so much fast fashion now that it's hard to compete on that level of the Zaras and H&Ms of the world. So, but I never even thought that price had anything to do with kindness.
It doesn't.
And it's like a lot that we do at Ramy Brook, people wouldn't even know half the charities that we're involved with because it's just from the heart. It's nothing that's even publicized of what we do, just because that's who I am as a person and like things that I believe in. And then I did originally, when I had a price in mind based on the designer level, something that was going to be way less. So this way, if I saw this dress, if the designer was charging, $1,000, you could buy 3 of them in 3 different colors because you don't have to spend $1,000.
Yeah.
You could, if you want black and then you also want pink and yellow, great. You could do it now.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's important when you are, when you get to that point and you are known, to give back in many ways, whether it's charity driven, speaking to young girls, doing everything you can with women in business. So there's definitely ways to give back. And when you start to build something and then you have an audience, I do think it's a big responsibility, especially as a true woman-owned brand, to help others and get the message out there.
Yeah.
Especially since so many women help me, I'm really paying it forward. So, and I really, my prices, I believe are, I'm hoping are just very fair. They're based on being fair, and appropriate of my competitors and what's in the marketplace. So,
Yeah. And what's interesting is that for me, I like it more when things are expensive. That makes me like the dress more because it's about a story I'm telling myself about my own worth in the moment when I go to buy something that's expensive. And that gets taken from me if I'm buying something that's less expensive. There is a feeling when you walk, out of the Gucci store, you feel like, oh, I just co-signed abundance in my life.
Right.
I just co-signed what's possible for myself.
Yeah.
You could go buy it.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm gonna say there's also a perception that if you spend more on something, it's better. And which isn't necessarily true, obviously. So it's important that as a consumer, you really just like what you're buying.
Right. And it's interesting because my grandmother, who grew up like, immigrants from, Eastern Europe, lived in literally that tenement house in Lower East Side, is amazing because that's exactly how she lived. And even with all of that, when eventually they were able to like move to Long Island and, they worked hard and they started a business and it's actually funny. I'll just tell you this just because it's interesting. It's a little bit related to fashion, but not really. But my grandfather, him and his brothers, the business they started was putting cardboard in men's dress shirt collars.
Oh, wow.
And the building that they actually owned where they did this work, where he would just feed cardboard into a machine all day long, is now Marc Jacobs in Soho. And my grandmother passed away 7 years ago. She passed away at 96. So she'd be whatever she would be now. But I remember her saying when my aunt, who lives in New York City, was like, "Ma, do you know what building that is now? Do you know how much money we would have?" They sold it in like the 60s. But
oh, gosh.
I say this because even growing up so poor, which they both were, she used to tell me, buy value, don't buy price. And what happened as a result is every single thing she bought, she A, loved it, and B, it lasted forever. So right. I have in my dining room her solid cherry wood dining set, solid cherry wood. And my mom says, like, in 1950 or whatever, when grandma bought this whole thing and it was every piece in the house was, even though it was like mortgaging a house, she said, this furniture will last forever. And every time she would go to the store, which wasn't every day, but if she would go to Saks, and she would say, "You see this scarf? I'm going to be able to give you this scarf. Do you see this ring? Do you see this? Don't buy price, Cathy, buy the value. And it gives me the chills because this is coming from somebody who was so poor as a child that she used to like stuff her fridge with food. She would never throw anything out. Like she had all of that mishigas. Like she absolutely did. And she was so dead on. She used to say to me, if you buy something for price, you overpaid and it's expensive because it's going to break. You're not going to really like it. And it's going to look at the lining. She would say, look at this dress. Look at the lining. This isn't well made. You should never have bought this.
Wow. Yeah. That was a mentality. My dad grew up on the Lower East Side too. Maybe they knew each other.
Yeah. Your dad's probably younger than them,
I know,
but
yeah, younger than, I know. So my dad grew up on the Lower East Side. My mom grew up in Queens. Like my dad went to like Stuyvesant High School. He was like a New Yorker through and through. And they met at Queens College.
And you grew up in the city too?
I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay. Got it.
So.
But yeah, isn't that interesting? Like there's the absolute.
And he believed in value too. Like they didn't have a lot of designer things, but my dad had one pair of like Gucci shoes that he had forever because he felt it was like the best value ever.
Right. And so I just find that that's like really interesting. It's like, and my friend and mentor, Seth Godin, says to me that low price is a race to the bottom because you can sell something faster and then you just have to make a million, apologies later because it's not made. Like, think about it. You could buy organic food at Erewhon or Whole Foods, or you could buy something cheaper, which has tons of preservatives that's costing you your health. So which one is expensive?
Right.
Right. Anyways, so in terms of everything you just said about having a women-owned brand, and we can kind of talk about this for a few minutes and then we'll wrap up. Show us sort of from where you sit behind the scenes. What's the percentage, whether you know the real number or not, just how many brands are actually women-owned? And what is it like for a woman to have a woman-owned and led business? And what are you hoping to do and lead by example to change?
That is such an interesting question because certain brands which you think are probably owned by women really aren't. There's major investors, private equity, and I don't know the answer of how many brands are truly women-owned brands. But it's not as many as you would think. I mean, where we sit on Madison Avenue, I'm in, the contemporary heaven. We start like there's Vince and there's Rebecca Taylor. Both of those are owned by a big private equity company. So, there's no woman-owned brand there. There's Veronica Beard. I believe, that's a majority-owned women company. And then there's other ones across, there's Bosch, there's Love Shack Fancy, there's something Navy. Like you walk up Madison, it's actually a really fun couple blocks to go shopping on. And I don't really know the answer in terms of, majority ownership. But what's important for the women-owned brands, is the clothing. Like I have to wear it, wash it, go out in it, like put it on my body to understand how a woman feels. It's very hard for other brands to live and breathe their brand if, the woman behind the name or the person behind that name is not the person. So there's nothing that leaves, our office, our factory, our design without my approval. And not everything is meant for my body type. I fully understand that, but it has to be meant for another woman trying it on. So she says, oh, it's not tight or it's too tight. Like exactly. I want people to feel good. So exactly. It's really important that people understand it's not like made by someone who doesn't care. So
yeah, I mean, that sounds so basic and necessary. And yet it's like, how much of history have women been listening to people tell them things and they don't really have any sense of understanding of what actually they need,
Right.
I mean, I have 3 daughters and it was just so fascinating going through choosing an OBGYN and how many times I was referred to these amazing men who were like handsome and smart and all of this stuff. And I was like, hang on a second. Like, there's no way he knows what I'm going through, you know?
Right.
And then just like the difference in like meeting a woman who, you know, and not to say, I mean, in the end, we actually used one OBGYN that was a woman, and we actually wound up using an OBGYN that was a man, and I actually liked them both for different reasons. But it's just, it is an interesting phenomenon. Yeah, it's really interesting. When Tamara Melman was here, she told the sort of inside scoop of what was happening at Jimmy Choo, and she's like, I basically was sitting around a table with like 9 guys and me, and
Right.
it was not working. Like
And
nobody
she
was
didn't
listening.
even get the credit for all those great designs.
Nothing.
So I
Nothing.
remember that. I remember hearing that. I'm thinking when she eventually left and started her own brand, but I was like, I had no idea that she was like
Exactly. Nobody
everything
does.
behind that brand. And there's
Exactly.
a lot of situations like that. There's all these old hero brands that, have nothing to do with women necessarily, but they're good at business. So it's successful. So
Yeah. It's interesting. So if you were kind of leaving us today with some advice for women who are listening right now, who want to start a business, who want to grow a business, there's so much you could say. I mean, you've been working in a successful business for so many years, but what's maybe one thing that they could think about or they could do? What's one next step maybe on the journey?
so one of the things I did was I really educated myself with certain things that I had no idea how to do. And an example of that is in the beginning, when I was taking credit card information from people, I knew I had to be buttoned up and do it right. So I took QuickBook lessons. So I hired this tutor. I
So
did 50 hours
cute.
of QuickBook lessons. And I really wanted to understand everything from like A to Z in my business and just learn how to do it myself, even though I couldn't do everything myself and I can't do everything myself. In the beginning, it was very important for me to learn how to do at least logistically and operationally things myself. And then obviously as you grow, you need more help
Yeah.
because you're not going to know everything and you shouldn't be expected to know everything. So it is okay to get the right team. And, everything starts with a leadership and it begins at the top. So the way you start your company, run your company, build your company is all going to come from you. So it's very important to lead by example. And it's just good to keep that in mind no matter what you do in life.
Okay. Last question. If you could look back at your younger self in business and give her advice that would have just helped speed things up, what would you say to her?
Um, Probably so many things.
You can
But
kind of go on and on. We have
yeah,
a few more minutes.
so my younger self, I would say you can't beat yourself up over everything bad that happens. There's a perception of when you see a brand or you look at clothing, you're like, oh, they're so successful. You just automatically think like they're great.
Sure.
And then you realize that's obviously not true. We saw through the pandemic how many of these brands went bankrupt and went out of business.
Yeah. That's
Brands
still
that
happening.
I thought was like strong and made money and successful. So I think I would tell my younger self, like, you have to be careful of different perceptions and what you believe is successful. Just really focus on your own business and what you could do right without worrying about everybody else around you. Like always wondering what people say, what people think. So if you just continue to go on your journey and just focus and like understand that like your passion is going to be the reason for your success, I think that's important to tell my younger self. as problems happen all the time.
Wow. That's really interesting. I feel like a lot of the women who listen to this show are also just like pleasers and want to be liked so badly. And when something, it takes very little to shut down if we have this perception that we are not liked or that somebody is upset with us. And when you're visible and you have a business, it's impossible that you're not going to have some people who are not happy
Oh
with it
yeah.
or don't like you.
Yeah.
And
It's like really it's the buyer's job when they come and look at our collection, not to love everything, but for me, it's very personal. So I've learned to walk in and out of the appointments and let my sales team handle it. Because when they when they criticize something or say they don't like it, it's very personal for me. But they're just trying to do what works for their customer. Not everybody is the same. So I've had to learn that and figure out ways around it.
yeah, well, that's really good advice. And it's good to hear from someone like, who's in your position that you're still dealing with that. Because again, it's not personal, it's just business. And they, like
Yeah.
you said, they have to do what's right for their customer, and their customers might live in Minnesota and they don't want anything that's not made of wool. And you know what I mean? It has like nothing to
Right.
do with anything other than what they need to for their people, which is really not as much a reflection on you as it is on what they need for them.
Right.
So tell everybody where they can follow along and buy some of the pieces, and just where's the best place to find you?
So, I mean, the best place to find our full collection would be on our website, ramybrook.com. If you are in the New York area, we have a store on Madison Avenue, 980 Madison, between 76 and 77,
So awesome.
which is great. And we're right across the street from the Carlisle, around the block from the Mark. So if you're making a weekend in New York, those are fun places to stay. If you are in the Hamptons in the summer, we have a pop-up shop in Southampton. And then we are sold in pretty much all the major department stores. So you could find us at Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, Saks, Neiman's. You can find us on Shopbop, and over 250 boutiques around the country.
Awesome. You must feel so proud of yourself, and it must just be really exciting to see that store on Madison Avenue.
That's been exciting. I love that.
How long have you
Thank
had
you.
it there?
We opened up September 2019.
Oh
So
my
it's pretty recent.
And you sustained yourself through this pandemic.
Yeah.
My God.
I mean, there's some tough choices, but we're resilient and learned how to pivot.
Amazing. This was really fun. I'm so happy that we got to connect. And yeah, it was so nice to meet you.
Likewise. All right.
Have
Good
an
luck
awesome
with your
day.
move back to LA.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Let's talk to Michele before we bounce off of today, because she's had her hand up too.
Hello.
I'm gonna add you. How are you?
I'm better. I don't know if you remember that you spotlighted me in January, I think, and I was a hot mess on that call.
Well, you look good. You look like you're got some clean vibes, like feeling good.
Yeah, I've started running and back to my meditation practice on a regular basis, and it's really, really, really helping. But the reason I wanted to put my hand up was I still have such a hard time like sharing good things that are coming in, but I just felt like today it just felt right. So I think I've shared here before, I have a leadership program. I started my own consulting business and in 2017, and it was always intended to be a side hustle. It was never intended to be something I would do. And COVID kind of put it on hold. And then I took your class or your programming to do this. And that just started a world for me.
Mhm.
And in January, when I was on your call, I was just so stuck, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of this feeling of being stuck. And I knew COVID was part of it because I'm a nurse and I work in healthcare.
Yeah.
And it was just, there was just a lot going on. So I didn't have any energy and I didn't care. Like I was just very apathetic about everything. And so when I started to sort of come out the other side of that, I was like, well, what can I do? And it was so weird because all I wanted to do was rebrand my website. So I spent time on it and I feel really proud of it now. It's much more a reflection of who I am. And I had some professional photos taken again that are not like headshots. They're me. And I'm so glad that I spent the time because I didn't know what was coming. But I also remember as part of Made to Do This really about just putting yourself out there and making connections. It's not about selling. It's really just about making those connections. And the irony is that my leadership program, which I launched during Made to Do This for the first time and had 40 nurses that went through it, is all about leadership from the perspective of caring for self and human connections. So like, it's totally aligned with what I think anyway. I've just relaunched my program. So it's the second cohort. I have 8 women. I was late on this call because my call was just before this call. And 2 of the girls were crying already on the first call. They're like, this is amazing. You're totally creating space for us to be able to feel seen. And I'm like, well, that's Cathy. Like, I felt like I was sort of channeling you a little bit through that. But I laugh because my first cohort was the exact same week last year. And I didn't know that when I rescheduled it. And I didn't even need the notes that I created for myself.
That's right.
For the web call this year. It just sort of came out of me. And I looked back after as I was logging on to this call, and I basically kind of had followed the whole script, but I didn't use them. I mean, they were there in case I felt like I needed them, but I just felt so much more aligned with the fact that those were my words, but they were my words because they were coming out of my mouth. They weren't because I was reading them on a page and felt like that was knowledge I needed to give them. It just happened so much more organically. And surrender is my word for 2022. And I had told you, I hope there's no littles around in rooms for people that are listening, that I was going to manifest the shit out of 2022. And I'm staying true to that. I always thought of surrendering as giving up. And what I've realized now, it's really about letting go of what isn't serving me. And for me, that was just since our last call, that was just a huge shift for me to realize that I'm not giving up on things. I'm really surrendering the things that I don't need to be controlling anymore so that I can do the things that I need to do. And I have started, I was starting to answer emails in some of the Facebook groups where I normally just sort of try to pour content into people. And I was on this one Facebook group and this woman kind of reached out and said, hey, I'm looking for some leadership stuff. And I responded and half thinking like, am I getting punked? So she emailed me back a few days later and she said, I'm in Canada. And she said, hey, Michele, I work for a big college here in Ontario. And we have like micro-credentialing programs for international students. And we would love to put your leadership program on our course platform. And for a second, I got off the phone with my husband. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm getting punked. Like, I'm pretty sure this is not real. And he's like, why would you say that? And I said, well, because I literally answered an email in a Facebook group. So I just signed an MOA with them 2 days ago. And the crazy thing is that she said to me, you don't have to do anything. Like, we have to make some adjustments in terms of how the students will digest the information. But she's like, we're just going to give your program to our design team and they're going to make it beautiful for you. So you don't even have to spend the money or do anything. There's anything you want, tell them what you want and they'll create it for you. I'm like, what? So, and she's like, you have full rights to your program. You're not giving up any intellectual property. And all we're going to do is do a 50-50 share of the revenue. So that's happening. And I've been on tons of podcasts, like every opportunity now I can to kind of share and make connections. I'm just so eager now. I'm co-authoring a book of 365 women here in Canada who each get profiled for one day of the year. It just became a #1 Amazon bestseller. I decided that I was like, oh, I need more branding shots. So I connected with this photographer the other day, and they're running this special where it's 40 women over 40, and most of the money goes to charity anyway. And you get this amazing full day of like hair and makeup and the whole glam thing. and all of these branding shots. But, you know, for me, that's like a self-care day. That's just like something I'm doing for me. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited about it. I just feel like I'm so much more in a place of being ready to receive. And the funny thing is that when I said about my website, all this stuff is starting to come in now, and all these people are going to my website, and my SEO now is ranking #3 in Canada for leadership, like places that people are going to find out for like leadership. And I know nothing about SEO. I've had to learn a lot really quickly. But I think I would have been so embarrassed if those people would have gone to my old website that wasn't at all a reflection of like who I am or what I'm doing and how I want to do it and impact the world. Um, you know, my husband's traveling this month. We're both traveling a lot, but we're going on vacation at the end of the month to wine country here in Canada. And there's houses that we have been looking at for 2 years. And he said to me, he called me the other day, he's like, Michele, he goes, I went around and the houses are now open again because of COVID. You can actually go in and do tours. And I said, we need to book appointments and go, because I need to put my feet on the wood. I need to feel the inside of those houses, because one of them is going to be ours. And I need to feel that and experience it and know what it's going to feel like to be looking out at our pool in the backyard on a beautiful lake in the house of our dreams. And so I said, book the appointments. Like I need that, because I know now in my core that it's available. Yeah. So again, here I am crying on yet another call, but it's really happy tears this time, because I can just see that the shift is just, they're so small. And when that shift can happen, big things will start to happen. And I'm so excited now to put myself in positions of expansion, and I'm not scared anymore. Like I used to be so scared of that. And now I just get excited about like, well, what can happen? Send an email. Like that's not, for me, that's not scary anymore. So I wanted to come back on to tell you that because of you and this group and everybody, I'm in such a better place. And I feel like things are starting to happen. And I just wanted to share that with you, because I just feel really, really grateful for being a part of this community.
That was like the most beautiful giant hug. And it was like, I don't know if you know this, but you literally hugged all of us. And it's so interesting because the first thing you said was, it's still hard for me to like share when good things happen. And the chat was like so lit up like Christmas lights, because there is no you. It's you and me. It's us. It is like in that song Worthy, she was like, it's there, that's it. It's you and me, right? Listen back to the song. And so when this tide rises, right, and talk about resonance, every single word, every single sentence, the vibration of you, it's so genuine, it's so beautiful. And so we all feel so happy for us. We feel so happy for you and happy for us that like good people win. And think about the generations, right? Your kids, and they get to walk that floor, and they get to have this heart, the heart of a nurse, right? And that gets to also receive, right? That's it. It's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, that wasn't like one thing. That was like 9 amazing, gorgeous things that are like all the beginning. And I was like tearing up when you were talking, because even before you were tearing up, because I think about what we do see out there, right? And I want people to see you, right? Like you're so beautiful. And that's what I was thinking, like her eyes, her hair, her face, she's so beautiful. It's like, it's everything that you are. It's the whole package. And it's like, this needs to be modeled, right? That's what a model's supposed to be, a model, right? Of this. And so I'm so excited. And, you know, yesterday I had a call. I've been taking calls with podcast networks because, you know, we sort of, for 5 years, I've been doing it just recording a show without a network. And I always had my own, right, resistance and like limiting thinking. And so in my mind, there was some thought that like, well, at some point, if you sign with a record label or a publisher or a podcast network, like, well, you wind up getting in bed with people who you become kind of a number, and who the hell knows? It was just kind of like at a certain place, I think I kept myself playing small because collaborating with like the establishment felt like, you know, you sign a deal with the devil kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And here I was yesterday, and I was like blown away that the person that I was, the team that I was talking to, there were two people, a man and a woman, and they were so loving and not just offering us so much money, but this guy, he lost his daughter. And he's like got the biggest heart. And he had so much to say. He got choked up when he was talking about why they wanted my show. And then the woman who runs the whole network, she's all about women leadership, which is why she's the boss. And 98% of the shows they want are female hosted. And I just broke into tears, like, oh, I get to have this with that. Like, I don't have to choose. And it was like, and then they were both like, what did you think, Kath? You're you. Like, didn't you think you'd get the right team around you? And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, cause I think it goes back to my relationship with support as a kid. And like, well, I can make it if I go it on my own. Right. But then to find out that you get these really good people and they're willing to say like, no, we've got this like, you know, pile of resources, and you get this like really good, you know, team of people who are like, and it's just like, whoa, yeah, that's right. That gets to happen, you know? I want everybody to kind of get that. And by the way, it's hard to like wrap your head around it, right? Like I started a show in my closet 5 years ago. It wasn't even a walk-in closet. It was a closet with like with the accordion doors, right? And I was sitting on the floor with the laptop on top of my shoe rack. I took the shoes off the shoe rack. It was like jiggling, right? And I sat underneath my coat. And now to be offered this amount of money because of love. It was just love. That's it. And we were
Congratulations, Cathy.
Thank you. We were all on the call crying. And they're like, gosh, you know, we've had so many amazing meetings and you're going to love all these other women that are on the network and some of them, you know, and blah, blah, blah. But we've never spent the whole meeting sobbing because you're so loving, Kath. You're so, and I was like, but you're so loving. Like, you know, like there's just such good people. Like they're so easy to love. But that's what I say that story to you right now, Michele, because you're so loving. I feel like your vibration is all love. And that's the thing, is that when they measure sound waves, when people drop into an open heart and they have monks or even regular people meditate and go into like a compassion practice or a loving kindness practice, they look at, right? They look at the way the heart moves and the way the brain activity moves. And it's so fast when we drop into love, it goes faster than the speed of light. So love creates immediately, right? It's instant. And so it's like of all the vibrations, and here's a shortcut. If you're feeling caught in your subconscious, we all get there and we get caught in the self-doubt. And if you can get into love, right? Which is not even about you. It's a trick. It tricks your ego into shutting up because it's generosity. It's for someone else. You get so busy going into love, and how much of that can I muster? How much of that can I muster today? And how many people by the end of today could I reinforce their dreams? Could I show up in their life? It's about them. And that's why when you said it was unscripted and I knew everything, because you are at a vibration of love and you've been preparing to be you your entire life. So of course you can talk, right? And when you said surrender, and surrender is about letting go, I hear surrender and I'm like, yeah, it's surrendering this part of you that thinks it has to do the heavy lifting. It's like, it's God that comes through you. It's the water flowing through the faucet. You know what to do. You just line it up. you just line up with it and it's going to give you the words. Because what's more impressive than somebody walking in a room and being loving? Nothing. Nothing. But when you're really there, and then you're not trying to figure out what you're going to say, maybe you're even just holding space for a second and there's love coming out of you. Well, when you're loving, it's really hard to be self-conscious. When you're there to be loving to someone else and to hold space, it's really hard to be like, how do I look? Ego gets to shut up when we go to love. And if you're a nurse, that's all you are.
Thank you so much for everything. This community is everything, really. I am so, I just feel so grateful to have come into your world when I did, and gone through made to do this when I did, and the people that, you know, are part of the community, have stayed part of the community. And I wanted to come to tell you that I'm in a better place, because I think that you deserve to know how much you are impacting the lives of people that you have created a safe space and a container for. But I also wanted to let other members of this community who were incredibly gracious to me and made me feel loved, that if you're going through a rough time, ride the wave, because I promise you, you'll come out the other side. And sometimes you need to go through the pain to realize that it wasn't for naught, and something else is waiting for you on the other side. And for me, there was a lot of lessons and that I thought I had already done, and I needed to do more work. And you know, and I think I'm coming out the other side, and now I feel more expansive and more open to be willing to accept that. And I wouldn't have been, I think, had I not gone through the last 4 or 5 months and the things that felt really unfair and kind of pissed me off. And I, you know, thought, I'm trying so hard to manifest a good life and do all the things, and nothing was happening. And I just realized now that I was just coming at it from the wrong place, and I needed to go through some stuff to be able to get to where I am now. So yeah, I wanted to share that with everybody else who might be struggling too. So thank you so much again.
Oh, it was so great. I'm so grateful that you shared it and you just lifted everybody. So thank you. And just keep sharing, because there's going to be so many more developments, and we get lifted by it. So, and I'm so happy for you, and so is everybody else. And I'm so happy for all the people that you're talking to in these programs and groups, because oh my gosh. And last thing is, you said, oh, and then I was channeling you. It's like, no, you're channeling, right? That place where we meet in that vibration where we let go and we love and we just trust it.